Hey guys, Ben here on 3dgladiator.com. Like I've already mentioned in the previous chapter, we will take a look at how to rearrange the interface icons to personalize ZBrush even more. So for this reason, I go to the preference palette again and go down to the config subpalette and take a look at this enable customize button. And when I click on it, you will see that the interface slightly changes, and that's because I enter this customize mode. The very first thing I'm going to do here is I will place this enable customize button somewhere on the interface, and you can do that by holding Control Alt on your keyboard and drag and drop the icon to the interface. And I dock mine below the canvas here, and that allows me to enable customize whenever I would like to rearrange or adjust some of the interface icons. Next, let's get rid of the row of icons on the left here and replace them with smaller ones. And for this reason, I enable customize again, and I keep Control Alt pressed on the keyboard and drag and drop the icon to the canvas and let them go above the canvas so it disappears here. And don't worry, all elements are still located in the palettes and sub-palettes here. So in this case, the brush icon can be found in the brush palette, and I can drag and drop it in position again. So in case I need it, it is still available. In this case, I don't need the entire row here, and I drag and drop all elements to the canvas to delete them. Also the color selector here and the color swatches. Perfect. Then I continue with the top row and get rid of some icons. I delete the home page, lightbox, and live boolean, and I move the edit over here and place the draw, the move, the scale, the rotate, and the gizmo below it. I also want to point out that you need to be a little bit careful when positioning the icons, because ZBrush allows you to place one icon above the other. For instance, if I drag and drop the sculptress icon, I can place it on top of the gizmo icon. And of course, that's not what we want. So always try to position them next or below to each other. And I drag and drop the sculptress icon here to the canvas, let it go to delete it, and position the gizmo icon below rotate again. Now let's move on with some buttons on the right here, and if I hover over them, you can see that certain buttons have shortcut keys assigned to them, like this BPR render here, Shift R, or the polyframe, Shift F. And even if I delete these icons, the function is still accessible either through the shortcut key or the palettes and subpalettes where the functions are located. For instance, I have here this document scroll and zoom, so I can move the canvas around and zoom in and zoom out. And the same buttons are located in the document palette. So we have the scroll here and the zoom here, and I can continue deleting them as I don't need them anymore. Also perspective, I would like to keep the floor, move it over to the left. I keep local, and I also keep symmetry. And let's get rid of the frame and of these little guys, and also move, zoom, and rotate. And I keep the polyframe, I keep transparent, ghost, solo, and I also delete the expose. And last but not least, I also delete the BPR render button and the subpixel button. And if I get out of this customized mode, I have now a little bit more screen space available and can extend the canvas to the right. When I enable customize again and go to the preference palette and scroll down to customize user interface, you can see these little icons here. Actually, they are called fillers, and I can drag and drop one of these fillers over here and start placing other icons below it. So I go to the alpha palette, drag and drop the alpha, place it here. I do the same with a freehand stroke and texture icon, and also a material icon and close this up with another filler. And if you exit the customize mode, these fillers become transparent and they separate groups of icons from each other, so the interface remains clean and organized. The cool thing here is that we can also use the space below the canvas to place different icons, and I drag and drop the brush palette to the left tray, and I start dragging some brush icons below the canvas, and you can even place them in 2 rows, and I keep doing this. Just drag and drop some random brushes here to give you an idea how you can organize them. And let's say we place some of the select and trim brushes here, select rectangle. So, and if you keep doing this, you end up with a very nice and organized interface. And I'm going to pause the video now and show you what my version looks like in a second. Welcome back. So this is the final version of my ZBrush interface, and as you can see, I have added quite a few brush tools at the bottom, and I have also added some stroke tools and some additional stroke settings that can be found in the stroke palette here. And I have also added some sliders to the top row, and now I will show you why I have added them and what they do. So let me start by drawing the head to the canvas and enter the edit mode or hitting the T key on your keyboard. And the first thing I would like to show you is this object shadow intensity slider and the object shadow length slider. They are both located in the render palette here. If you scroll down to the preview shadow sub palette, they are located here. Here's the intensity and the length. And basically what they do is they control the preview shadow when a 3D model is active and drawn on the canvas. So if I move the slider up to 1, you can see that the shadows in the chin area become really dark, and I can also make them a little bit longer. And all in all, it's very difficult to see the shapes or distinguish the shapes from each other when the shadows are that dark. And for this reason, I always set both sliders to the lowest values possible before I start sculpting. So I move this slider down to 16 and the object shadow to 0. And this allows me to see the shapes a little bit better here. Of course, both sliders work in conjunction with the light here. If I open up the light palette and move the light around, also the direction of my shadows and highlights change. But all in all, it still works the same. If the slider is set to 0, it's a little bit easier to see what's going on in the shadow areas. Then let's take a look at this angle of view or field of view here. That can be also found in the draw palette next to the perspective button. Perspective is on here. You can turn it on and off by hitting the P key on your keyboard. And by adjusting the field of view or angle of view, we change the focal length of the camera. So let's crank it up to something crazy like 150, for instance. As you can see, the model or the head looks heavily distorted on the canvas. And the default value is 50. And I also set it to something lower than 50, like 30 or even 25, depending on the project I'm working on. And sometimes also in combination with 3D printing. So I do some prototype prints and then try to match the angle of view or field of view in ZBrush with a physical outcome. So let's set it back to 50 and continue with some other settings. I've already talked about the icons on the left here, and I want to make you aware of some additional features some of these icons have. For instance, the polyframe. I can access polyframe with the shortcut key Shift F on the keyboard. And if you look close to the icon, you can see that there are 2 additional settings at the top of the icon. So the first one, let me display only the polygroup colors without the wireframe, and the second one allows me to show only the wireframe without the polygroup colors. Basically, that's the main reason why I have left the button on the interface, because these additional settings are only accessible through the icon and you cannot assign a shortcut key to them. And the same goes for the floor button here, for instance. I can activate it by hitting Shift P on the keyboard, and I can display additional grids by clicking on these symbols at the top here, X, Y, and Z. And so I end up with additional grid planes in the scene. And again, like already mentioned in some previous chapters, don't forget to save the adjustments on the user interface. And again, you have two options here. You can go to the preference palette and go down to the config subpalette, and here you have the store configuration and save user interface. If you click on the store configuration, the master file that is located in the ZBrush folder gets replaced. It is called custom user interface CFG. And of course, you can also save the user interface file as a separate CFG file in any hard drive location of your choice. You have probably already noticed that the top menu here consists of two additional palettes. And in the next chapter, I will show you how to create these custom palettes, how to populate them with the tools of your choice, and how to assign a shortcut key so you can access the tools on the fly. Happy ZBrushing, and see you in the next tutorial.